Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. All right, today we're going to be showing you something of the likes that I guarantee many of you have never seen. All right, this is a pretty new idea for a lot of people, and we are going to be using these airbows here to take some deer. And we're down here in South Georgia hanging out. I got my buddy here, Chris, with Up North Air Gunner. Great YouTube channel. He does a lot of great advocacy work, all different types of hunting footage and things like that. So we're going to be walking you through these rigs that we're using, talking a little bit of nerd talk on some of the specs and everything. I think you guys need to stick around. This is going to be so fantastic. This video is going to be epic, and you're going to love it. So before we get started, I would like to thank our friends at Pyramid Air. If you are looking for anything at all related to air guns, air bows, projectiles, air tanks, fill lines, adapters, hoses, accoutrement, if you will, check them out. Really, really great people, and a big thanks to them for supporting our channel, supporting our efforts here. Especially, it's important as we're getting into this, Chris, to kind of talk about how, you know, advocacy, and I know that's something we're going to touch on in a separate video, but, you know, there is a little bit of pushback on these arrow launchers.
Just a little bit.
But we're going to get into that in a future video. But for now, I mean, dude, let's get into these things a little bit.
Absolutely.
I mean, these rigs are fantastic. I mean, it is just insane. Like, we're making great power.
Yep.
You know, of course, FXs have always been known for having wonderful triggers, great build quality, great power, excellent plenum design. I mean, there's just so many things we got going on. So let's talk a little bit about it, man.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, FX they're known for precision. I mean, they're winning competitions every year at the highest levels. And, you know, the first thing we should talk about is actually the FX Crown, because this is actually the rifle that you can convert from an arrow gun back to a rifle, and this is the rifle that won the Rocky Mountain Airgun Challenge this year. So 100-yard bench rest, you can put a barrel on this, shoot pellets, shoot slugs, swap it over to arrow barrel, and now you're shooting arrows. And whenever FX came out with this, first thing I thought was, I got to find a state where it's legal to hunt with these things, where Georgia, where we're at today. You know, Eric and Chad invited me down, and I'll tell you what, we saw a lot of deer this week, a lot.
We are in a target-rich environment.
Yes, we are. So one of the interesting things that I thought about these, and I learned about these as I was testing them, is there are other air gun slinging arrow slingers out there that can shoot arrows like 500 to 700 feet per second, okay? That's even up above and beyond like a crossbow power. This was interesting to me because this is much more akin to like compound bow and maybe low-level crossbow velocity. And the reason why I thought that was really cool was, for me as an archery hunter, I hunt with my Bowtech, I hunt with a crossbow from Pyramid Air, and I like getting those deer in really close, because to me as a hunter, man, that's where all the skill happens right there.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit about this aspect of it.
Yeah.
So Chad and I kind of got thrown into the fray on this, okay? So for one, all right, a couple of caveats. Chad is not used to filming any type of, you know, close-in archery work in terms of filming. And I have never even actually taken a deer with a bow at all. So I'm not used to having deer come in this close. And it's been, you know, kind of a challenge on these hunts. I mean, you're going to see this footage. It's amazing how close these deer got. On one stand, Brandon and Chad were hanging out, and this deer literally, I mean, like, you could just reach out and take the arrow and just stab him in the throat. He was so close. And we're not used to that. And I'll admit, in terms of guiding you guys on this hunt, we've got Oscar here with GRS. Of course, these beautiful GRS stocks on both these guns. I love the laminates here, full adjustability, which is nice. But we've got Oscar here, you're here, Brandon from FX is here. So a lot of these guys are archery virgins in terms of deer. I've never shot a deer with archery. I mean, you're the only archery guy here that is even close to that. So it was a real challenge for us. And I had a lot of pressure on me with this hunt to get these guys on deer. When they told me, hey man, we really want to see these things 30 yards and in, I'm thinking, I don't really know how many deer I've shot under 30 yards.
So let's
most deer that I shoot are between 50 and 100, and most shots in Georgia that people are going to take with a rifle are about 100 yards and in. But not usually 30 and in. So it was kind of new for me to kind of think, all right, how can I strategically, I'm just trying to share something I learned from the standpoint of getting the hunt set up, that, you know, I learned, you know, that you can actually get a lot closer to deer than you think you can. So that was something I took from this hunt that was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And what's great about the FX Airbow guns is that now they're shooting at a compound or maybe a lightweight crossbow velocity. One of the things that I learned in my testing was, okay, they have definitely this penetration capability. We learned by putting traditional broadheads on them, instead of like a typical 100 grain broadhead that most people will run, we're running 225 grain, just very traditional single bevel broadheads. And what that does is that gives you more penetration through the deer. So it's actually just maximizing the power capability here. So all of our terminal ballistics testing that we did, we were getting full pass-throughs on hogs, on the targets. And what we found was, though, at the velocities that we're shooting between 225 to 300 feet per second, when you get deer in that close, they can still jump the shot. And
Right.
so in archery, we talk about jumping the string. So when they hear that bow go off, they can drop almost a foot sometimes. And so you got to really
There's
make
really
sure
no way around that, right?
There really isn't.
And every
Yeah.
animal's different. Like sometimes they'll jump and sometimes they won't.
Right.
And that's just kind of one of the challenges, right? Like
Absolutely.
they don't always do it. But I
don't
guess it
always
just
do it.
depends on how well they hear it or whatever.
Exactly.
Like
yeah.
those big fuzzy things they put on the
the whispers?
bows.
Yeah, yeah.
That's to make it
Quiet the
quieter,
string.
right? Yeah.
But the deer have such a high level of hearing and smell and sight. They're on alert. When they come in that close, they are on alert. And so in our hunting this week, I mean, we got some really good deer down. That was like a 6-point buck that I got, and then Oscar got that spike, and it was just, full pass through on Oscar's, and mine was just a perfect liver double lung shot and only went like 75 yards.
So Chad and Brandon got busted, and I'm sure you're going to be seeing some of their exploits here. So we know that situation didn't end in success. So what we wound up doing after they got busted, the next day we decided, hey, Chris knows what he's doing, right? Okay, he's obviously really good at self-filming, so let's give him an opportunity. And we put him in this stand where we know we've seen a lot of crazy deer get really close, and we got you in there.
Yep.
You saw these deer come in. So how'd you feel initially? Like, were you excited?
Yeah, I was. And what was great, I typically hunt elevated. So in Michigan, I'm always up in a tree. If it's a later season, the leaves are down, I'm up in a tree saddle. So this was actually my first time ever hunting from a hub blind with archery equipment. So that brings all kinds of different challenges. The wind, they can wind you a little bit easier when you're on the ground like that. They can see you better. And so I'm sitting there, and maybe about an hour and a half before dark, I just see this bachelor group of bucks coming in. Man, my heart was just coming out of my chest.
Dude.
And that hub blind that you put me in, it's got that like a one-way. You can see through the screen, but the deer cannot see you through that mesh. So we had the windows open, and I had to just kind of hide behind the mesh, wait for those deer to come in, and I had to make sure that they could not have a line of sight to me.
Yeah.
Because they'll silhouette you when you're in those blinds.
Yeah.
So I'm hiding behind the mesh. And there's one right in front of me, maybe 20 yards, and I see this other buck coming in. He goes around behind, and I was off. I'm basically holding unsupported for, it felt like eternity. And I'm shaking, and I'm hiding behind the mesh. And so here's a critical thing about all of this. He's facing me and quartering towards me, and you never, ever want to take a shot on a deer with any kind of archery equipment when they're facing you, because you're going to hit their shoulder.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm waiting for him to turn broadside. So he turns broadside, and as soon as he turns broadside, I pop out, and he comes up, and he starts to lock antlers with that other deer. And at that point, my heart is just out of my chest.
Isn't it so exciting to witness, nature happening? Like when things are happening and they have no idea you're there and you're just an observer.
Absolutely.
That's what I love about hunting. I mean, like, the shot is cool. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
When you shoot the deer, you harvest the animal. I feel like that's the culmination of everything.
Right.
But it's not what I thrive for. With deer hunting, I'm just as happy to watch them as I am to shoot them. And there's been a lot of times, especially as I've gotten older, and you know this, we've both gotten older, and like, once you've been hunting for 20 years, 25 years, it kind of becomes less about the kill and more about the experience. And what ends up, and drinking beer and hanging out with your buddies at deer camp and cooking steaks and smoking cigars and having a good time and talking about politics and religion and music theory and women. And look, that's part of the focus of being out with your friends.
Absolutely.
And that is something I cherish a lot more even than the hunt itself.
Yep.
But also, what I've enjoyed is I've become a better hunter by shooting less deer.
Yeah.
Because what you get is the opportunity to observe deer more. You're not going to learn their behavior unless you take the time to watch them.
Yep.
You know, and then you learn the little nuances. Like the other day, I got winded, but they were all kind of hanging out, and they were stomping at me. So you learn, like, wow, look at them stomping. Look how they act. Or like when the mom and the fawns come up, and the fawns are behind them, and mom is doing this. You know, she's like a symphony. She's like smelling with it, like she's conducting a symphony with her head, you know.
Yeah.
And the little fawns are behind her, and they're watching. See, so they learn from their parents, and it's just so fascinating to see the behavior. All right, so these bucks are about to lock up.
Yep.
And things are crazy, so we took the shot.
So I took the shot, came over, put it right. He was standing right at my 0, which was perfect. So like right at 22 yards.
Yeah.
And the thing is he was a little bit quartering away. So with archery shots, quartering away is good because you can come in through the liver, front side long, through the back side long, got all the way through it, and it was so cool. When he mule kicked, you could see the broadhead sticking out the back side, and his leg came back, snapped that bolt in half, and we had immediate blood trails.
Oh, you cannot ask for a better result.
It was absolutely perfect.
I'm not going to lie, man. The pressure was on for me. Not only was the pressure on for me to get you on a deer or to get this shot, because I know how crucial it is to show how well this equipment works and everything. I mean, at the end of the day, videos like this are a great way for us to showcase this equipment.
Right.
I mean, like we're using these awesome Tacticams. We got the great Element optics here. We got a 3 to 18 by 50 Titan here on this particular gun.
Yep.
You know, so it is a great way to showcase the gear, but it's also a great way to showcase our abilities to connect people with the shot.
Yep.
So we got in, we got a good blood trail. We went and got all the guys to help you track this deer because I believe that evening was that was the same evening that Oscar shot the spike.
It was.
We're going to talk about that in a minute.
Absolutely.
We did. So this was, just to clarify, this was a Dreamline that you shot.
Yeah.
Right?
So I want to talk about this a little bit because this was the first ever for me. I'm not sure the first ever. I've never seen a deer taken with the Dreamline. But this is FX's most affordable air gun. I mean, this is their most entry-level air gun. And when they came out with the Airbow barrel for this, you know, we're coming down to Georgia. I've taken deer with this before, but I was like, okay, let's try to get a deer with the FX Dreamline.
Yeah.
And we connected, and he only went 75 yards, and it worked. It's great.
I love the pepper laminate stock on that one. I really love the look of that 3-color laminate.
The GRS Sporter stock, and you know, we've talked about the Fenris, we've talked about the Bifrost, but the fitment and the ergonomics of these stocks, it's so critical when especially if you're out trying to be as ethical of a hunter as possible to make sure the fitment of all your gear is exactly the way you need to be. You owe that to the game animal.
That's right.
Right? And these GRS stocks, I mean, I have this on my deer hunting rifles now with my Creedmoor. I basically have all of my hunting stocks that will fit into GRS. That's what I'm using now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we got over, grabbed some beverages, got over, and went to look for your deer, and we had a great blood trail.
Yep.
We found them instantly.
Yep.
You and I were able to get them out, and you got you a nice, solid 6-pointer.
Absolutely.
Probably 2-year-old deer, but importantly too, decent sized body, you
Yep.
know, pretty hefty deer.
Yep.
So to see that arrow get full penetration, that really instilled confidence in me in that particular gun. So, I mean, I'm proud of you, dude. You did such a great job.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
Such a great job.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Oscar also shot one, and it ended up working out perfect because you used the Dreamline,
Yep.
he used the Crown.
Yep.
And it was a really, really great shot. You know, a great filming job on his part. He self-filmed as well. I'm really impressed at how well he was able to film, and that turned out great. We were talking to Oscar later. Because of where he was hunting, it was a pretty wide open area. He found an immediate blood trail and tracked the deer roughly about 75 yards. It just ran down the field, piled up right there. So that's consistent between both the guns, that the deer didn't run more than about 75 yards. And that's pretty typical for archery, isn't it?
Yeah, that's about typical.
Pretty typical.
Yeah.
And obviously a spike, you know, not a very big deer, but still great data because his shot was further. I think his was like 35, 40 yards. So that was a much further shot. And we got this gun tuned.
Yes.
Oh, just so right to get just the right amount of power. I think we're shooting this 225 grain broadhead and this shaft. I think we were chronographing this arrow at about 325 in that ballpark.
Roughly.
And that's a little on the higher side.
Yeah, you're getting into crossbow land now. I mean, with a 225 grain broadhead at 325, it's kind of like crossbow power.
Yeah.
And we've done quite a bit to this Crown to get it up to that point. So FX this year started coming out with tungsten hammers. And what that does is it allows you to run higher regulated pressure on this And so with that tungsten hammer, you're just increasing the velocity and the pass-through power of these arrows.
You know, I want to comment about that. It's
Yeah.
so fascinating to me how in the airgun world, now we see this in the firearms world a lot too, of course, but in the airgun world, it seems like it's a much nerdier subset
Oh,
of people.
we nerd out
like,
big time.
They're really wanting to like get every little bit of accuracy, and there's so much tunability, like especially on the Crown. You can really dial every little setting in just right.
Yep.
And I feel like airgun shooters tend to be much more precise and methodical in what they do.
Yeah, I mean, when I first got into air guns just in general, one of the things I realized, it's not just grabbing your, dad's shotgun off the corner and going out for deer hunting. You need to learn your tool just down to every little nut and bolt. And it really, being in the sport makes you want to dig in more, learn how to tune your gun more. And we got, there's hand reloaders, in the firearm sector.
Yeah.
We can do that on the fly with these guns. We don't have to go back to a bench. We can do it right there in the field, and we can adjust the regulation, we can adjust the hammer spring tension, and we can get these projectiles just holding insanely tight groups.
And if you think about it, black powder's the same way. That's a
Yep.
different conversation, but black
Yep.
powder shooters,
Yep.
they can kind of go, let's play around with this charge, play around with that charge, versus unless you're loading your own centerfire ammo, you pretty much are limited to whatever you buy from the factory. So I wanted to mention too, before we get too much further, it's important to have air at deer camp. So show us this little travel compressor, because I brought my huge compressor, my Pyramid one, and don't get me wrong, it's a great compressor, but the thing weighs like 250 pounds or whatever. So this is a much more portable option. I didn't even know this was a thing until you showed it to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we came down here to Georgia this week, I knew that I needed to have a portable compressor. This is a brand new compressor that's being imported here in the United States by Donnie FL and Saber Tactical. And this is the PCP Kong Littlefoot. And you can hook this up not only into a wall socket, but you can hook it up to your pickup truck.
Dude, I got to get me one of those.
Yeah.
That's epic.
Yeah. So, being at deer camp or just really just out shooting, we always need to have as much air source as possible. Because one thing is about air guns is when you get one, you're going to shoot a lot. So you got to have air. It's a great source to have it.
One thing I noticed too, when we were doing some of our testing and just sighting in the arrows and everything, I did notice that we were getting a heck of a lot of shots on the fill.
Yeah,
from the arrows. I mean,
Absolutely.
I think, gosh, we probably fired 25 arrows before we had to
Dozens.
fill back up. So,
Yep.
I mean, that's a lot of bang for the buck in terms of, air on tap.
Absolutely.
So even if you, aired your gun up at home and took it with you, now I'm not saying that it's not good to have that. Of course it is. I mean, I would never show up to a deer hunt and not
Right.
have a way to fill my gun.
Right.
So that's important. But even if you didn't bring a portable bottle, I mean, these things do sip air, which I think I was pretty impressed by their ability to sip air.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yep.
Versus as much as I love, some of the Air Force offerings, they are air hogs. And that's not a problem. It's a different tool for a different purpose.
Yep.
But one thing that has always impressed me about the FXs is how they sip air.
Absolutely. And
They're
for
very
me,
efficient.
What I love about it is that you can have this one platform do many, many things, right? So you can have one air gun, you can go deer. This is crazy. Dropping a 225-pound buck and putting another barrel on it, and now you're shooting squirrels.
That's
all
right.
in the same platform.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Very great point. All right. So I think we've pretty much covered this in a great synopsis.
Sure.
Dude, listen, Chris, this hunt was so much freaking fun,
Epic.
dude. I mean,
Absolutely
like
epic.
last year we had John and Shermichael down,
Yep.
and we exposed them to their first time deer hunt. They were so ecstatic. You've got to check out the hunting video that we made with John and Shermichael in this very location. We've made so many great memories and so many great friends down here hunting in South Georgia, and I've really enjoyed myself. And what this has done for me has opened up my eyes to archery as a valid concept for deer hunting. I've never really been that much into archery, but this, because it's so gun-like, I'm a gun hunter. I love hunting with black powder, but this makes me want to get out early during archery season and challenge myself to get close to these deer and get really close and make the shot. So Chad and I did carry these guns, and we did hunt with them while we were here. We were unsuccessful. Oscar and Chris connected, and I'm just so happy with the performance. And of course, look, FX, man, they really knocked it out of the park with this gun. It's just fantastic.
Awesome.
And it's only going to get better.
It's just gonna get
the
better.
tungsten hammer, I'm sure Frederick, look, he's a mad genius when it comes to this stuff. So he's probably going to find ways, to get more power.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a great trip, Eric, and really appreciate you having us out.
Yep. So definitely check out Chris's channel, Up North Air Gunner. We are going to be making one other video talking a little bit more about some of his advocacy and some of the things he's done in the past, but we'll save that for a future video. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget, check out Pyramid Air. Really great people if you're looking for any of this gear. check them out. Wonderful group of people. And dude, thanks, man.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Man, it's been a great
Absolutely.
hunt. Many more videos on the way, more hunting content on the way, which I love this content. I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit of a bear to put together. Sometimes when I tell Chad, like, hey, we're going hunting, Chad's like, But we love doing it. We're up to the challenge, and many more videos on the way. We'll see you soon.